I'm here today as a mother of a victim of sexual abuse of my son by a parish priest. While my son was in grade school, in 5th grade, he was an altar boy, and he was abused by our parish priest, Brisky, from 5th grade through 8th grade. He never told us about the abuse and kept it to himself. Brisky appears in the grand jury report as probably one of the most physically and emotionally damaging to children. He abused over 100 children. And one of those children, and as an adult now, is sitting beside me, John. And we've always kept in touch. He was a friend of my boys. And I'll let him tell you a little bit of his story.
I'm John Delaney. I started to get abused around 5th grade, right under everybody's nose. We would get called out of class. It's had its effects, not just on me, but just in general. My family, my children, my mother, they're affected by it.
He was the science teacher at our Christian school, and he was my mom and dad's very good friends, and they trusted him enough to leave me alone with him. I was a tomboy. He would wrestle with me and the kids, and I would jump on top of him, and he would jump on top of me, and he would tickle me, and he tickled me a lot. He got more brazen and began to touch me under my clothes, and I didn't know what to do.
My name is Tim, and when I was a child, I was abused, and it's been a life-changing event, and I don't believe that I'll ever be fully whole from it. In other words, I feel like myself and others that I know are permanently damaged in many ways in leading a normal, healthy, happy life. When I was 15, a friend of mine worked at a grocery store in my town, at a corner grocery store, similar to probably what a lot of people know of before 7-Elevens and the Wawas. But the owner and the operator of that store hired me and groomed me, and then over the course of 3 years abused me.
I was sexually violated from the ages of 10 to 12 by a family friend. He was a big brother figure in my life. He taught me how to fish. He took me camping. I felt very safe with him. So one day, I can see it like it was yesterday, it was a fall, it was a rainy day in October. I was at his apartment. I was 10 years old, and I asked him, what is the word sex and what does it mean? And then from that moment forward, he chose to show me what sex was.
When I was about 15 years old, the athletic trainer at my school approached me and befriended me, and he encouraged me to go out and run with him, and he taught me how to run. And we ran for a while, and he acted as though he was a real friend, and eventually he invited me over to his house. And after we ate lunch that day, he asked me to come into his living room and suggested that we do some stretching. And at that point, he pulled me on top of him and began what was abuse that would last for the next few years.
When I was 15 years old, I was very involved with my church youth group. I had decided that I wanted to be a youth pastor and was delighted at the opportunity to be mentored by the young and dynamic youth pastor we had at our church. When she started asking me to stay late after youth events or to come after school and help at the church, I was really excited at the opportunity to be mentored by this person who I really respected. So she would more and more frequently invite me to concerts and to events at her house, sometimes involving other youth and more involving just she and I in private. Everything about this mentoring relationship really changed one night. My youth pastor, sitting next to me on the couch, turned and kissed me, and that was the beginning of a years-long sexually abusive relationship that was started and guarded and highly maintained by my youth pastor, and had a really profound effect on my life.
Come here, Arthur. Would you get me for my 40th birthday? Oh, yeah? What can I do? What can I want? What can I do?
We didn't recognize the problem because the way that Arthur III, I guess, was groomed, it made it difficult for him to come forward. We didn't know that Arthur had been plied with alcohol and narcotics. He would take Arthur to go buy cocaine. He would give Arthur the card to go to these really bad places in the city to go buy heroin. He would give him tons of money. So evidently, as a result of the abuse and the taste of narcotics, which is oxycodone, is highly addictive, we found out that Arthur was doing illegal drugs. The Franciscans sent him a release telling him that they'll give him $50,000 if he signs this release. I told these 3 priests, look, I'm not looking for nothing. I sent my son to school to get an education. You broke him, now you fix him.
They didn't care.
They didn't care.
They were willing to give a kid that was using heroin $50,000. Who would do that? Who would do that? Here's $50,000. Now go buy yourself $50,000 worth of heroin or whatever and basically kill yourself.
I don't think they understood it wasn't about the money.
I think the hardest part I've had as a parent, my husband and I said, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us? And he said, he threatened Brisky and told him he's going to tell his mom and dad. And Brisky told him and laughed at him and said, your mom and dad know about it. They're in on this. Didn't you know that? So at 10 years old, he was afraid to come home. He was afraid to go to school. And this happened under our watch of not knowing that a pedophile had violated my son and our family.
He told me the same thing. Told me that my mom knew what was going on and that my dad didn't care about me because it wasn't my real dad, it was my stepdad. And that they knew. And he laughed at me just like he did Jimmy. I don't remember what it's like to be a happy kid. I don't have that. That was taken from me at a very early age. And, you know, here I am at 43 and I'm still dealing with it. Depression, PTSD, anxiety attacks. I am not in the place I should have been. I'm not. My life was taken from me.
These victims carry a very, very heavy weight every day when they get up and put their feet on the ground to try to act normal, like nothing has happened in their life when their whole childhood was stolen from them. My son is also 43. He has been in and out of institutions, suffered depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, broken relationships, things that a young man and young boys should not have to experience. It takes a lot of courage for John and all the victims like him to tell their story.
Every time the phone would ring, I would think that it was him calling my mom and dad to tell on me, and I was guilty. And I was so afraid, and I felt guilty all the time. I got sick to my stomach. And so one day I was actually praying up in my room, and I felt so guilty, and I was asking God to please forgive me, don't let this happen again. And as an 11-year-old, and I went down into their bedroom and I told my mom that their friend Bill had been touching me. The next thing I remember is just being glad it was over, and I remember my mom being on the phone with my aunt, and I remember my mom and dad crying all the time, and in shock and not knowing what to do. And I went on with my life. I did what I was supposed to do. I told, at the time, I was 11. Was I supposed to be the one who was supposed to go and call the police? Was it my responsibility to go and get an attorney? I told the people that were over me. I did what I was supposed to do at 11, and they did not protect me. I got his address, and I decided I was going to write him a letter. And I mailed the letter. And I never expected 6 days later to get a letter back from him in his handwriting on notebook paper. And he said things in this letter that I stopped breathing on, because he confirmed every single thing that I was worried about. And he began to say, I know I am a pedophile and cannot be trusted around little girls. And he said, you were not the first, and you were not the last. I went to the detective and told my story. They did investigation on him. They knew where he lived at the time, all of this, and told me that he was actually accused 2 other times, but nobody had said anything. They didn't want to put their daughter on the witness stand for just fondling. I found out that mine was a first-degree felony under the law of Pennsylvania. And the detective was so excited because he said, Debbie, this letter is unbelievable proof. He called me a couple weeks later and said, I am so sorry, Debbie, but your statute of limitations are over. They're up. Came forward when I was 11. But nothing was done, and it was hidden and it was swept under the carpet because everybody was worried about their image more than they were concerned about a little girl who was raped many times.
He made me an object, and he hired me because of something about my physical presence. The abuser, who was clever and criminal in his actions at grooming me and making me feel liked and wanted. He would give me things. He would give me alcohol. One of the, I think, other ways that he had me under his control was he gave me drugs, along with all of the other subtle mind game things he would do to me and to the other workers. How do you do that to a 15-year-old? And at the time, I just tolerated it. I just didn't know how to get out of the situation. Because you sit back, and others have said to me, well, why didn't you walk away? Or why didn't you tell somebody? Well, for me, I was 15 years old. I didn't understand the significance of what was happening. And once I had a feeling like something wasn't quite right, I was trapped. It took me to age 46 to be able to come to terms with and accept that I was abused. I was in total denial about that I was suffering from the effects of being abused, all of the post-traumatic stress disorder that I was dealing with, all of the severe depression that I was dealing with, that I had come to understand to be cause of being abused. A dozen flashbacks a day, often in the morning when I'm driving to work. I kind of can zone out and just something will flash me back to these years, and it's a panic.
I have a photographic memory of my abuse. I can be back there in a moment. I can see everything he did and feel everything he did. My abuse stopped when I was 12 because he became engaged, and literally at age 12 I thought, thank God, someone will take care of his sexual needs. No 12-year-old should ever have to think that. I packed it up and tried to move forward with my life. But abuse has a way of coming out. It haunts your soul. Mine came out in panic and anxiety attacks. I was 23 years old, suffering debilitating panic and anxiety. And I realized I need to report my own abuse. And I did. And that's when I learned I had absolutely no rights. I reported my abuse and nothing could be done. I moved forward. 5 years later, at age 30, I receive a phone call from my abuser's sister-in-law, and she's concerned about her daughters, his nieces. And I said, please report it. I'm out of my statute of limitations. I have no rights, but I will certainly tell my story to help you. And I never heard from her. I wanted to give my truth to his wife, and I learned if I did that I could be sued for harassment because I have no proof. So what I did to be able to clear my conscience is I set my perpetrator up with an undercover sting investigation, surrounded him by 5 investigators, and got him to tell the truth. It cost me $10,000, but I had my evidence so I could give the truth to his wife and not get sued. People often ask you, why can't you move on? Get over it, it's been over 20 years. I wonder, would we say that to one of our veterans who fought in a war? Will we tell them to get on, get over it? No. Every child that suffers a violation of their body went through a war alone, with no protection except their mind. It takes a lot of courage to speak your truth. Every time I go fishing, I have to prepare myself because I was violated on the banks of the Susquehanna River. I was taught to fish there, and I was also violated there. My perpetrator had a mustache. My husband doesn't have a mustache because I can't stand the feel of bristles on my face. I was perpetrated in a certain type of car, and I refused to buy that brand of car. People need to understand it doesn't leave you. It stays with you. You have to figure out how to live with it.
Even to this day, I remember back to that very first time in his house when he had undid my pants and got on his knees and made me have sex with him. It was the most terrifying event of my life. I was totally isolated. The shame and the isolation that I experienced was unbearable. I really was afraid not only to tell anybody about what was happening, but I became afraid to even let anybody get to know me for fear that they could figure out what had happened to me and what was going on. I back then was fearful that what people would think of me if they found out what happened. I thought that I would get in trouble, and back then there was nothing that I could do about it. I was paralyzed in fear. I couldn't tell anybody physically or emotionally. It was really like I was his prisoner. And it cost me a life of friendships, and really it cost me the ability to have a fulfilling relationship in my life. The emotional damage that his actions created in me was so significant and it was so painful when I was a child that I was not even capable as a young adult to deal with this particular issue. I had always known that it had happened, but I just didn't have the courage to come forward and say something until much later in life. And the fact is, today, there's nothing that can be done to hold this gentleman accountable.
The abusive relationship lasted until I was 19, but it lived underground in my life for much, much longer than that. I was having flashbacks, and I was very the technical term is hypervigilant. I was very on all the time and experiencing a very strong stress reaction. And it was thanks to the courage of a survivor who came up on the stage at this youth convention and told her story of having been sexually abused that I finally, at 27 years old, could put together all the pieces in my own life and realize that the relationship I'd had with my youth pastor was exploitative and very wrong. When I realized that I had been sexually abused and that my abuser was continuing to work in a church, I did what I thought was right, and I called the police. Well, the police weren't able to help me because I was not currently under 18 and reporting abuse. But I was sure that there was going to be a way to legally remedy this situation because she was working with children and I knew she was a danger to them. So I did pursue a lawsuit and came to find out that both the criminal and the civil statute of limitations had expired when I was 23 years old. So I was just 27, and actually that's pretty young, I've came to find out, for survivors to come to realize what had happened to them and come forward, but it still wasn't young enough. She's been working as a pastor for the last 11 years. And so to this day, my perpetrator, somebody who profoundly affected the course of my life, is still able to have access to children and never has really been exposed for what she did to me.
What? And smiling to the camera. For breach of contract.
Is he smiling? Soft cake.
Yeah. Is he smiling? Is he showing his teeth? Nah, he ain't showing his teeth. Show your teeth. You ain't got no teeth. Show them. Nah, I got like here.
I don't know whose sodas these are, but they're one.
There we go. You gotta show them.
Arthur had been suffering the withdrawal symptoms that occurs from not having regular access to the opiates. He lost a lot of weight. This kid at one time jumped out a window.
Remember that?
Because he was going through withdrawal. He actually jumped out a window.
Yeah.
He tried to kill himself by taking an overdose of aspirins.
Yeah.
He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. It's just been a nightmare that we can't get out of, even now, today. And they keep telling me they're sorry. You know, you keep telling people they're sorry, that word loses its effectiveness. I don't believe them. I think they're only trying to hide the pedophiles that they know about. Our lives have been ruined. We don't go nowhere. We don't do anything. Basically, I'm in a self-imposed exile. I don't want to go nowhere. I don't want to see anybody. So I mean, it's not unusual us to just wander around in a daze every day.
I'll never forgive them. I'll never forgive them.
Kids die every day. They get involved in automobile accidents, they go to war, they get sick. But to have a child taken away from you by the same people that promise you salvation if you do what they tell you, that's the ultimate betrayal. I think the time is long overdue for people to step up to the plate and stop protecting these people and stop making Pennsylvania a paradise for pedophiles.
Well, as we all know, it is still happening, and the perpetrators are still out there.
The reason for me being here is the voice for the guys that can't say it, and I'm tired of it. I want something to be done about it. It's not right that this man and other people walk around still victimizing kids.
And I'd like to add to that, John, of holding the perpetrators responsible, but also the people that protected them and knew about it. They have to be held responsible. Sometimes even more.
There's no statute of limitations on murder. There shouldn't be on rape, and that's what it was. I was raped by the time I was in 5th grade. And I gotta live with that every day, every single day. And there's no justice for guys like me. I feel like I never can get any justice until something happens. And you know, if we can't hold the church and the people that are accountable for it, then the legislators need to do something to change this law so that we can do it anyway.
The world is a dangerous place, not because of the people that do evil. It's because of the people who do nothing about it.
I keep hearing, oh, you know, all these people they're out for money, and well, why didn't they come forward earlier? And what are they doing coming forward at 37 and 40 when this happened they were 11? Why all of a sudden are they coming forward? And, you know, this is about money. They just want money. That's all they want. Why, you know, that's all they want. And I sit here and I think, here I have proof. I could go into court right now and I could have all the proof in the world. It would not get thrown out of court. And this man admitting it and even touching his own daughter from his wife's admission with several witnesses, how could this be about money? And now, because of it being too late, my perpetrator can do whatever he wants to anyone else he wants to do it to. I can't warn anybody. I can't do anything about it just because of a law. I live in Florida. We have no statute of limitations. If I wanted to come forward at 70 years of age, I could prosecute if the guy's still alive. I can't believe that in Pennsylvania, a felony, a first-degree felony to a child under 13 years of age has to come forward by the time they're 30. When statistics prove most victims can't even put into words until they're 30 to 50 years of age. That's just common knowledge. That's when you start to realize and you look back on your life and you're at midlife and you start to look back and you start to say, wow, I cannot believe that this happened. Just when you finally get it, it's too late. It's when you finally can put it into words. It should never be too late to put a pedophile behind bars to stop him from touching your child, your granddaughter, your niece, your nephew. There should never, ever be any time limit on that.
It was a crime and it hurt me deeply and continued to hurt me deeply, and I had to start making some changes. I didn't think that I just didn't think I was gonna live. What happened to me can happen to, and may have happened to others that you know, and they're not gonna wanna talk about it. You have to watch your kids, because it's the grooming that happens first, and then the abuse is gonna happen later. You have to be on guard, unfortunately. because there's people out there that are escaping prosecution criminally, or they're escaping the civil suit that they should that should be happening. I mean, how much damage can one man do and get away with it? What I need is the ability to use the legal system in order to come whole again, if that's even possible.
When you're violated, you lose your childhood. You're thrown into the adult world with a child toolkit. You lose your innocence. It dies that day. I don't want one other child to have to endure what I endured. Your soul dies. No one wants to be in this camp. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask for these memories. This is an ethical and moral issue. We all need to protect children. When our head hits the pillow at night, we need to know that we did enough. Please protect these kids. Pedophiles don't stop.
He retired from the college level and then went back to get a job where he could be around children again. This is about protecting other kids. And the only way to protect other children and to stop serial pedophiles from being out there in the community is to allow people like me to come forward. Unfortunately, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds, and 30-year-olds aren't able to come forward for a number of reasons. If we change the law, then I'm convinced that through discovery, a significant amount of information will come out and we'll have the ability to protect children. And I think there's really only two choices. One is to support a change in the law that allows cases to be brought to court, or to simply support pedophiles. And it comes down to whether or not somebody wants to stand with the pedophiles or stand with the children of the Commonwealth. And it's one or the other.
It's only looking back now that I can see how deeply that experience was buried in my consciousness for what it really was. I had no idea how to frame what had happened to me as a young person. And I believe that finally I'm coming to the end of what was a 20-year detour in my life. But yeah, it's been 20 years going around about and trying to find this place of stability and awareness about myself. And I really am really concerned for kids who are going to have to take that detour as well.
I mean, we could go on and on about the horror that's become our lives, but we need these laws changed. And the people that are hiding need to be exposed. And if you don't want this to happen to your kid, then get the laws changed. Because we can't bring our son back. And we can't destroy the misery and the horrible mental pictures that continually loop in our mind. We can't do it.
We live in the land of the walking dead.
Yeah, right.
We function, we work, we try to be normal, and inside we're dead. We're just dead.
Nobody should have to lose a child in this manner.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Arthur. Happy birthday to you.
1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys, only 1 in 10 will tell. We can protect children. We can warn families. We can take these monsters off the street. Let's get this done. We have the power. Now is the time. It is time to stand up for victims. It is time to stand with victims. It is time to enable justice to be served and generations of children to be protected. What will you do with the power?
Legislators need to come together today to act now to reform the laws so that seeking justice, which is the right thing to do today, can be done for victims, survivors, their families, and for the future protection of our children.
You know, I'm looking for this bill to be passed so other victims, you know, it's a hard thing to come out. And some of us do come out right away and we're not believed.
He was a victim of priest abuse from age of 11 to 14, 3 years. His abuse led to his drug addiction.
Our brother, unfortunately, he passed away, but at the same time, he was also one of the few people that was able to come forward at such a young age. A lot of people aren't able to come forward until they're in their 30s or their 40s. So, it shouldn't matter how old you are. When you have the strength to come forward, you should still be able to tell your story and get justice for your story.
Can you keep a secret and guard it with your life? Can you keep a secret, cross your heart, hope to die? Would it stay between us, just simple words between us? Can you keep a secret this time? If I kept a secret and didn't tell you, if I kept a secret but you found out the truth, would it be strange between us, tense and blue between us? If I kept a secret from you, I don't see what the big deal is. Come on, be a realist. I can't tell you everything. Nah, I can't tell you anything. Can it be a secret if everybody knows? Can it be a secret if words are words and anything goes? Nothing's